The first time I noticed they'd blocked me, I thought it was a mistake. I'd just gotten out of the shower, wrapped in my old lavender robe, hair still damp against the nape of my neck. I dried my hands, picked up my phone, and texted David. "Don't forget the insurance papers are due." The little bubble hovered, then vanished. No delivered, no read, just nothing. I tried Ivy, then Jordan. Same thing. I even sent a sticker just to break the tension. The screen stayed cold. It wasn't until I called and heard the automatic voice say, "This number is no longer accepting calls," that I sat down. I didn't cry, not right away. Instead, I looked around the room, at the half-finished mug of chamomile, the tiny spider web I'd been meaning to wipe from the lamp, the old passbook from my savings account lying open on the dining table. The room felt full of echoes, birthday candles, whispered secrets, the soft thud of David's footsteps when he was little. And now, silence. I reached for the passbook, tracing my name with the tip of my finger. Beneath it sat my wedding ring, taken off the day after Robert's funeral and never put back on. I picked it up, held it to the light. I'd worn it through arguments, pregnancies, hospital visits, and yet this hurt felt worse than widowhood. They blocked me. Not a "let's talk later," not even a lie, just a wall. I stood, walked to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the thick envelope I kept for important things. Birth certificates, the deed to the house, Robert's death certificate. I slid the passbook inside, then the ring. If I was being treated like a stranger, I'd stop pretending I was still their mother in the ways that cost me most. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew this: silence would be my reply. And silence has weight too. It started the way most damage does, in small, polite increments. "Just until Friday," David had said once, standing in the hallway with his hands shoved into the pockets of that old gray hoodie he never seemed to wash. "The landlord's being a nightmare, Mom. I swear it's just this once." I wired him the money before he even finished the sentence. Ivy called 3 weeks later about Jordan's school trip, said they didn't want him to feel left out. "He'll remember this for the rest of his life," she'd said, soft and syrupy like always. I remembered when I used to sound like that, back before I had to hide the price tags on groceries. They never paid me back. Not once. But they always thanked me, always promised the next time would be different. It wasn't. I used to keep track in a small black notebook I tucked into the back of the recipe drawer. After a while, I stopped. Not because it stopped mattering, but because I was too ashamed of the total. The worst part? I told myself I was helping, that maybe I hadn't done enough growing up, that maybe this was what mothers were for, patching holes in their children's boats while their own ship quietly sank. The day David asked for a spare house key, I didn't hesitate. "Just in case," he'd said. "What if something happens to you?" I smiled then. It felt like love. Now I wonder if it was always about access. 3 nights ago, I was going through my banking app, half out of boredom, half habit, and saw a charge I didn't recognize. Automatic, clean, just under the threshold that would trigger a bank alert. A. Thorne Consulting. I didn't know the name, but I knew the amount. I sat there holding my phone like it was a stranger's, like maybe I'd picked up someone else's life by accident. The last favor I paid for wasn't mine to give, and they never asked. They just took. I should have known something was off when Ivy had cloth napkins on the table. She never used cloth napkins. Too fussy, she'd say. But there they were, neatly folded, all matching, sitting beside dishes that looked like they'd never seen a microwave. The whole place smelled like lemon polish and rosemary chicken, like someone trying too hard to mask a stain. I brought a cobbler, still warm. Jordan barely looked up from his tablet when I walked in. "Hi, Grandma," he mumbled. David kissed my cheek like a politician, then reached for the dish before I'd even taken off my coat. We sat, toasted, laughed in patches. Then Ivy leaned forward and said, "We've been thinking." That tone. Sweet on the outside, sharp underneath. I knew it from church committee meetings and school board arguments. "You've got a lot on your plate," she continued. And David and I were talking. Maybe it's time we helped with some of the bills, just to ease the load. David chimed in, too casually. Yeah, we could set up automatic payments. We'd manage it for you. Nothing big. I felt the fork pause in my hand. Ivy added, You've been a little forgetful lately. Jordan said you called him twice last week asking the same question. The room didn't spin, but it shifted, tilted in a way that made my hands go cold. They weren't offering help. They were laying groundwork. They weren't calling me Mom. They were calling me a problem. I laughed, quietly. Not because it was funny, but because it kept me from screaming. Thank you, I said, setting down my glass. But I've been managing for 63 years. I'll let you know when I forget how. I saw David glance at my purse across the room where my passbook sat, zipped inside. I saw Ivy's smile flicker. They were already planning something. They'd already started. That was the day I stopped being a mother at the table and started being a name on paper. And I don't think they even noticed. I hadn't been to the branch in years. It looked exactly the same. Beige tile floors, dusty ficus in the corner, and that tiny please take a pen mug that never had pens in it. I stepped inside and felt the hush settle around me like an old cardigan. Hi, Mrs. Thorne, Nina said from behind the glass. I blinked. You still remember me? Of course, she smiled. You and Mr. Robert used to bring in fresh bread for the staff every Christmas. I nodded. He used to tie the loaves in red ribbon. I used to pretend I didn't love the attention. She buzzed me into the small consultation room. Chair number 3, by the window, same as always. I could see the little bakery across the street where Robert and I used to split a muffin before appointments. I'd like to review my account history, I said. All right, just need a few moments to pull that up. I watched her fingers dance over the keyboard. There was something soothing in it, like the rhythm of knitting needles or rain on a roof. When she turned the screen toward me, I leaned in. There they were. Tiny transactions, recurring withdrawals. Nothing dramatic, just enough to go unnoticed. $40 here, $65 there, monthly, quiet. Then a larger one. Shared sub-account setup fee. I didn't recognize the name attached. I pointed. What's that? Nina frowned. That's a linked account. Set up online. It pulls directly from yours. My throat dried. Can I see who authorized it? She clicked. The page loaded slowly. Every second like a thud in my chest. David's email. They didn't ask. They just did it. I'd like a printed copy of the last 6 months. Every page. Nina nodded. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. I waited as the printer hummed to life. The sun hit the side of my face, warm and blameless. They thought I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't understand, that silence meant permission. I folded the papers and placed them in my purse beside the passbook. I wasn't silent now. The tea was still steeping when Lorraine sent the photo. Look who I ran into, she wrote, followed by one of those little smiley faces with the sunglasses. She always used those. I tapped the image open. It was Ivy and Jordan, standing in front of that boutique in the high-end mall, the one with purses locked behind glass like museum pieces. Ivy had on her beige wrap coat and sunglasses perched on her head like she was waiting for paparazzi. Jordan was mid-laugh, holding a soda in one hand and a bright red shopping bag in the other. But it wasn't their smiles that stopped me. It was the bag hanging from Ivy's elbow, rich burgundy leather with a gold clasp. I recognized it. She'd once sent me a screenshot of it saying, "Total dream bag, Mom, just in case you're feeling generous." I'd laughed and ignored it. The price tag was still dangling from the strap. I zoomed in. The clarity sharpened. She wasn't even trying to hide it. That's when I saw it, just barely. Ivy reaching into her wallet at the register, pulling out a bank card. Forest green, the exact shade of mine. My stomach turned. I remembered the day, almost a year ago. We were at the gas station, and she'd offered to pump for me. "Here, let me take your card. It'll be quicker," she said. She'd smiled. I'd handed it over. I didn't ask how long she held onto it after. I deleted the photo from my phone, but not before printing it. I slid the printout into the envelope with the bank statements and the passbook. The paper was warm from the printer, like it had a pulse. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't desperation. It was entitlement, dripping in perfume and wearing a $700 bag I never agreed to buy. And now I had proof, printed in color and dated. Let them block my number. I was done playing blind. I called David first, not to accuse him, not to yell, just to ask. The line rang once, then clicked to voicemail. I waited for the beep, then I hung up. I texted, "Call me when you can." No response, not even the usual "delivered" note under the message. Ivy was next. Same thing. I even tried Jordan. It went straight to voicemail. That one hurt in a way I didn't know how to name. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then opened my call log. A red string of unanswered attempts stared back at me like warning lights on a dashboard. One by one, the ties that held us together had been cut, and not by accident. They had blocked me. Not one of them. All of them. I called Lorraine just to test my theory. She picked up on the second ring, cheerful as ever. "Nope, nothing wrong on my end," she said. "Probably just bad reception." I thanked her, hung up, sat there in silence. The tea had gone cold. I set the phone down, screen up at first, then changed my mind, turned it face down. The screen had a small crack across the bottom corner, a quiet fracture that caught the light like a scar. The envelope on the table had started to thicken, passbook, printouts, the photo of Ivy at the mall. I smoothed the flap shut and placed my palm over it like it was a wound. Then my phone buzzed once. Not a call. Not a text. Ivy had posted a story, a quote on a beige background. "Protect your peace, even if it means cutting off the ones who raised you." I read it twice. Then again. I didn't screenshot it, didn't message back, didn't give her the satisfaction. I walked to the kitchen, opened the window, and let the air move through me like a broom sweeping dust. Let them have their peace. I was keeping my silence. But silence doesn't mean surrender. I hadn't opened the flour tin in years. It sat on the second shelf in the pantry, white enamel with faded roses, the lid slightly dented on one side. Robert bought it at a flea market when we were first married, said it made the house feel like someone actually lived in it. I used to keep cinnamon and clove in there. Now, just a few brittle recipe cards, an old measuring spoon, and the thing I'd nearly forgotten I'd hidden. A manila envelope. Unmarked, folded flat. I pulled it out slowly, like I was handling something alive. Inside, the power of attorney form Ivy had printed for me. Months ago. She'd come over with store-bought muffins and that overly concerned voice of hers. "It's just for emergencies, Mom. God forbid something happens." "You want someone you trust to take care of things, right?" I'd smiled, nodded, said I'd think about it. And when she went to the bathroom, I tucked the envelope under my arm and slipped it into the tin before she came back. Something about it felt too polished, too prepared. Now, holding it again, I saw it clearly. It wasn't an emergency plan. It was a chess move. Her name was already typed in, Ivy Thorne, listed as primary agent. A blank line for my signature. No mention of David. No mention of Jordan. Just Ivy. I ran my fingers over the paper. It felt heavier than I remembered. I refolded it, sealed the envelope, and this time, I didn't put it back in the flour tin. I placed it into the thickening file inside the folder I'd started keeping in my bedroom closet, under the sweaters I no longer wear, but can't bring myself to give away. They tried to move me off the board while I was still breathing. They forgot one thing. I learned to play chess before they were born, and I never signed anything. Nina didn't flinch when I walked in this time. She just smiled gently and nodded toward the consultation room. I followed, the now familiar folder pressed against my chest like a shield. "Would you like tea?" she asked, already reaching for the little office kettle behind her desk. "No, just the truth." She understood. I slid the latest statement across the table. "There's a sub-account linked to mine. I didn't open it." She clicked through screens with practiced hands. "It was created 6 months ago. Online application, linked to your main savings account for convenience." She said the word gently, like it might bruise. "Show me who has access." More clicking. Nina tilted the screen so I could see. There were 3 names listed under authorized users: Ivy Thorne, David Thorne, Jordan Thorne. Not me. Not technically. Not in the fine print. My jaw tensed. Were they using my account to fund that one? She nodded. Auto transfer set every Thursday, $65. That's groceries, I whispered, though no one was asking. That's what I spend on groceries. Do you want to revoke access? She asked. I looked at the screen, at the names, at the tiny last accessed 3:42 p.m. line under Ivy's name. She'd been in there today. Yes, I said. Every last one. Nina tapped and typed, confirmed, printed. Her hands moved fast, but mine were still. She slid a stack of papers across the table. This confirms the revocation. And this, she added, is a fresh authorization form. If you'd like to name someone new. I took it, but didn't open it. I wasn't naming anyone. Not this time. As I left, the automatic door whooshed behind me, and the heat outside felt like a wave breaking over skin. They called it helping. They called it love. They called it family. But I'd read the terms now, and I was writing my own conditions. I cleared the dining table like I used to for holiday dinners, wiped it down, laid out placemats, even lit the little vanilla candle I keep for guests. Only this time, there were no plates, no laughter, no family, just proof. The passbook came first, creased but not broken. Then the printouts from the bank, each one dated, marked in yellow where the money had disappeared like breath in cold air. The mall photo, printed twice, one for me, one for the lawyer if it came to that. Then the envelope from the flour tin, the one with Ivy's name typed too confidently, too neatly. I stacked them side by side, paper like armor. It felt absurd in a way. All this work just to prove I hadn't lost my mind, that I was still here, that I had been here all along. I reached for the folder, bright yellow, the kind I used when I used to volunteer at Jordan's elementary school. I'd color-coded every field trip form, every bake sale list. Back then they called me organized. Now they called me confused. I opened a drawer and pulled out my old label maker. The battery was low, but it still worked. I typed my maiden name, the name before marriage, before motherhood, the name no one had claimed or misused. E. Monroe. I stuck it onto the folder's tab. It wasn't revenge, it was resurrection. I slid the folder into the cabinet, behind the old photo albums and warranty papers, locked the drawer. No one would find it, not unless I wanted them to. The candle flickered, catching the curve of the passbook still on the table. I placed it gently back in my purse, zipped it shut. There was a time I believed love didn't require documentation. That trust was enough. But now I had proof, not just of the theft, but of me. They rang the bell at exactly 8:17 p.m. I know because I'd just turned off the stovetop and checked the clock above the sink. The second hand had just ticked past the 5, 2 of them, late 30s maybe. One man, one woman, lanyards, polite smiles, khaki vests that tried too hard to look non-threatening. "Good evening," the woman said. "We're from the Community Wellness Outreach, just checking in." I didn't open the screen door. "Did someone call you?" I asked. The man answered too quickly. "Yes, a family member. Said you've been hard to reach and there were concerns." Concerns. That word. Like I was a broken appliance someone reported to maintenance. I held my phone in one hand, reached for the latch with the other, then stopped. Instead, I opened the camera and hit record. "I'm doing just fine," I said clearly, "and I don't recall asking for a check-in." The woman's smile faltered. "It's just protocol, ma'am. We need to confirm you're safe and sound." I stepped back slightly so the camera could catch both their faces. Then I held up my driver's license. "This is me. I'm lucid. I'm standing in my own home, and I have no interest in letting strangers inside." There was a long pause. The man glanced at the woman. She nodded. "Understood. Thank you for your time." They left as politely as they came, but I watched through the blinds until their car turned the corner. I locked the door, double-checked the deadbolt, then walked to the front hall and set my license down on the table. Face up, bold, undeniable. They weren't just watching. They were testing, seeing if I'd stumble, seeing if I'd fold. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was recording now. And I'd learned the hard way. When they start treating you like a case file, you document everything. I started with the email. It took 2 tries to remember the recovery question Ivy set up just in case. "What's your favorite color?" She'd put taupe. Mine is burgundy. I reset it. Created a new password with numbers no one could guess. Not a birthday, not an anniversary, not the last 4 digits of my house number. I picked a phrase no one alive would know, except me. From there, it unraveled fast. David had linked his phone number as the backup on my bank app. Jordan had been given view-only permissions on my utilities account, probably to help pay the gas bill, which I'd never asked him to do. Ivy's name showed up as the emergency contact on my pharmacy file. I remember her saying it just made paperwork easier. I'd nodded. I'd signed. That was months ago. I went into every account and pulled their names like weeds. One by one, click, remove, reset, verify. My fingers moved faster with each deletion, not frantic, precise. I called the bank next, asked them to remove any and all email and phone numbers not ending in my digits. "Yes," I told the woman on the line. "That includes my daughter and son. Yes, even if they say it's to help." I clicked through my contacts and deleted David's number, then Ivy's, then Jordan's. For a moment my phone felt oddly lighter, as if the weight wasn't in the metal, but in the history attached to it. I didn't cry, I didn't hesitate. I just reclaimed the thing they'd chipped away at piece by piece, my name, my number. The screen dimmed and then lit up again with a familiar notification. Login attempt blocked. I smiled. Let them try. They'd named me forgetful. They'd labeled me incapable. But they forgot the most dangerous kind of woman, the kind who knows exactly where everything is. The soup simmered slowly on the stove, the way Robert used to like it. Chicken broth, garlic, a few strands of dill. Comfort food. Humble, honest. The kind of thing that filled a house with warmth before it ever touched your mouth. I ladled a small bowl and sat at the kitchen table, alone, but not lonely. There's a difference. The file folder sat beside me, yellow and full now. Bank records, photos, a notarized form that never saw my signature. All of it stacked, labeled, alive with proof. I didn't need to rehearse what I was going to say. I wasn't making a scene. I was making a transaction. The spoon clinked gently against the rim of the bowl. I took small sips, letting each one linger. There had been so much noise lately. Legal noise, emotional noise, digital noise. But here, in this bowl, in this kitchen, I was quiet. I reached into the drawer next to the stove and pulled out Robert's wedding ring. I still kept mine in the envelope, but his I kept here, always close. It was scratched, warm from the nearby burner. I held it between my fingers, not for sentiment, for steel. He would have hated this, the betrayal, the smugness, the way Ivy smiled when she lied. But he also would have told me to handle it, and I was. I rinsed the bowl, set it gently in the sink, wiped the counter clean, like clearing the stage for something important. Then I took the folder and placed it into my handbag, tucking it beside a small notepad and a capped blue pen. I set my alarm for 7:30 a.m. The bank opened at 9. Tomorrow I would sit in chair number 3 by the window. Tomorrow I would sign the form. Not the one Ivy gave me. Mine. The one that says, "I am here, I know, and I'm not asking." I arrived at 8:59. Not 8:45 like the anxious do, not 9:15 like the unbothered. 8:59 exactly. The sun hadn't fully cleared the building across the street, so the sidewalk still held a slice of morning chill. I liked it. It made me feel alert. The door hadn't even unlocked yet. I stood there with my handbag tucked under my arm, folder zipped inside, shoes polished. I could have been headed to brunch, or church, or a funeral. The security guard opened the door right on time. He gave me a nod. I returned it. Chair number 3 was open, the one by the window. Same chair Robert and I used when we applied for our first joint account. Same chair where I cried after his funeral when I moved the balance into my name. The bank still smelled like printer ink and those little paper deposit slips. At 9:03, they called me. The teller wasn't Nina this time. This one was younger, maybe new. Her name tag said Erica. She looked like someone who wore fleece in the summer. "Good morning," she chirped. "Good morning," I replied. "I'd like to make a full withdrawal." She typed. "From which account?" "All of them," I said. "Everything in my name, savings, checking, and the linked subaccount." Her fingers paused. "That's quite a bit." "I know." She glanced at her screen again. "Are you sure?" That moment, right there, that was the moment. Not the paperwork, not the folders, not the passwords I changed or the photos I printed. This, being asked if I was sure. I looked her in the eye and smiled. "Yes, I am." She nodded and moved swiftly. Bills were counted, signatures taken, receipts printed. She handed me the envelope, neatly sealed, surprisingly warm. "Anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I said, sliding the envelope into my bag. "You already have." I walked out into the sunlight. It wasn't just my money I'd reclaimed. It was my decision. And I wasn't done. When David asked for the spare key, it felt like love. "Just in case something happens," he'd said, standing in the doorway with that easy smile of his. Back then, I thought it meant he cared, that he wanted to protect me. Now I know it meant something else entirely. Access. I pulled the drawer open, second one down in the hallway console, and there it was. Brass key on a faded blue ribbon. The ribbon had once matched Jordan's baby blanket. Funny what you remember. I didn't hesitate. I took a clear sandwich bag from the kitchen, slipped the key inside, sealed it with a press of my fingers. Then I wrote a note, small, deliberate letters in black pen. "Return what's mine. Take back what's yours." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. The sidewalk was still warm from the morning sun. I stepped outside barefoot just for a moment to feel the heat on the soles of my feet, laid the bag gently on the doormat, not tucked under it, not hidden, right in the center, in plain sight, a reversal. They had come into my home in ways I never invited. Quiet invasions, bank accounts, digital logins, wellness checks. Now I was drawing the line. I stood there a moment longer, just breathing, watching the way the light caught the curve of the key through the plastic. Then I turned back inside and locked the door. Twice. I didn't look through the peephole. I didn't check if the bag was gone. I didn't need to know when they picked it up. I just needed to know that I had put it down. On my terms. On my mat. In my name. David's name was still in my favorites. That little star beside it, left over from years ago, back when he'd call on his lunch breaks just to ask if I needed anything from the store. I tapped the contact, scrolled down. Block this caller? Yes. The green dot next to his name vanished. Ivy was next. Hers was harder. Not because I had doubts, but because her messages always looked pretty. Perfect punctuation, heart emojis. She'd once sent me a text that said, "You're our roots, Mom." I'd saved it for months. Now I tapped block contact. Jordan's name made my chest ache, but only for a moment. He was young, impressionable, but he hadn't once called, not even to say, "I don't know what's going on." I hit block. Then I went to my phone settings and turned on Do Not Disturb, not to hide, to choose peace. The silence was immediate. The absence of buzzing, dinging, vibrating, all the tiny digital tethers that had bound me, tugged me, worn me thin. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table. Then I lit a small lavender candle and opened the worn brown notebook I keep in the drawer. My journal. Nothing fancy, just ink and pages. Mine. I dated the top of the page. Blocked. I wrote down what time I did it, what I felt, what I didn't. There were no tears, no exclamation points, just air and stillness. I used to think being a mother meant being reachable at all hours, being a safe house for their storms, a fixer of everything. But no one ever fixed me. And now I was unreachable. Not because I was lost, but because I finally found the off switch. And I pressed it. The landline rang at 2:11 p.m. I hadn't heard it in weeks. I almost didn't pick up. Most people didn't have the number anymore, not since cell phones became a second skin. But something about the ring, steady, urgent, old-fashioned in its honesty. I answered on the third chime. "Mrs. Monroe?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "This is Stephen from First Horizon Security. We've detected unusual withdrawal activity on your savings account and attempted to reach your emergency contacts. They're no longer authorized," I said. He paused, the kind of pause that happens when a script gets interrupted. "Understood," he continued. "We're now contacting you directly. I just need to verify identity before we proceed." "Go ahead." "Mother's maiden name?" "Whitaker." "Last 4 digits of your social?" I gave them. "Last known transaction before today's withdrawal?" "Pharmacy refill, $38.12. There was a brief click of keyboard strokes. "Verified," he said. I could hear the shift in his tone. Respect, maybe. Or surprise. It didn't matter. "We'll be updating your profile to reflect sole access," he added. "However, there are still some secondary alert systems connected to a prior email, one ending in Ivy Thorn." "Remove it," I said. "Yes." "Ma'am." He confirmed the changes. "Offered to mail a new physical statement." I said yes. "Anything else we can assist you with today?" I almost said no, then paused. "Yes," I replied. "From now on, contact me directly. No one else." There was a click as he logged the note. "Understood, Mrs. Monroe. You'll receive confirmation by mail within 5-7 business days." I thanked him. Hung up. Set the receiver back in its cradle. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being shut out. It was the silence of being in charge. They'd tried to cut me out of my own life. But the call came to me. Because I was the only name left. The email came in at 7:43 p.m. No subject line, just "Final account verification request." It wasn't threatening. It wasn't dramatic. Just standard procedure, they said, to confirm that all third-party access had been removed and the account now stood in a single name, mine. There were 9 security questions. I sat at the kitchen table, candle flickering beside me, and opened the form. "What was the name of your first pet?" "Buttons. A mutt with one floppy ear and breath that could melt plastic." I typed it in and smiled. "What was the make and model of your first car?" "A rust-colored Mercury Sable with a broken radio. Robert had helped me pick it out. I'd loved that car more than some people." "Who was your favorite teacher in school?" "Mrs. Lander, 5th grade, the first adult who told me I was allowed to say no. Each question brought a memory. Each answer felt like a breadcrumb leading back to a version of myself untouched by manipulation. Then I reached the last prompt. In case of emergency, who should we notify? I stared at the blinking cursor. Not David, not Ivy, not Jordan. Not anyone who saw me as a vault to be emptied or a signature to be collected. I typed my own name. Eleanor Monroe. It looked stark, but it felt right. If something were to happen to me, I didn't want rescuing. I wanted recognition. I clicked Submit. The screen refreshed. A green checkmark appeared. "Thank you. Your information has been updated." I leaned back in my chair, and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Not a victory lap, not a breakdown, just a release. For the first time, I didn't feel like a problem to be managed. I felt like a person again. I closed the laptop and whispered to no one. "I'll take it from here." The doorbell rang just after noon. Not the hesitant press of a visitor, not the double tap of a neighbor. It was urgent, repeated, angry. I didn't move at first. I stood behind the curtain and watched. David. And Ivy. She was talking fast, hands flying, her phone clutched like a shield. David stood rigid, like he was trying to hold his breath and his temper at the same time. I opened the door, just halfway. Neither of them expected that. "Mom," David started, "we need to talk." I said nothing. Ivy stepped forward. "We've been trying to reach you. Your phone—" "Blocked," I said. I nodded toward the jar sitting on the porch rail. Clear glass. Inside, the spare key sealed in a bag. Next to it, a printout of the transaction history. Yellow highlights, names, dates, amounts. David blinked. Ivy went pale. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "We were just trying to help." "You helped yourselves." "It was for Bill's. Your care," David insisted. "We thought you'd appreciate—" "Without asking?" I said. "Without permission? You don't get to use care as camouflage." Ivy's voice softened. She tried that syrupy lilt she always used when asking for favors. "We were just worried." I didn't flinch. "You don't get to be worried after the withdrawals." They looked down at the jar. David reached for it. I stepped in front of him. "That's yours," I said. "Take the key. Leave the rest." Ivy's eyes narrowed. "You're really doing this?" "No," I said. "You did." I let the door swing shut slowly, quietly. No slamming, just gravity and resolve. And then I turned the lock. Click. They stood there for a moment longer, blurred shapes through the frosted glass. Then they left. I didn't watch them go. Didn't need to. The lock was the only sound I wanted to hear, and it was enough. They came back the next day. This time, I let them in. Not because I wanted to, but because I wanted them to see the look on my face when they realized they'd lost. We sat in the living room, the same couch where Jordan used to nap after cartoons, the same carpet Ivy once spilled red wine on and blamed the dog. "I'm not here to fight," Ivy began, folding her hands in her lap like she was at a prayer circle. David didn't sit. He paced behind her like a man rehearsing a defense he didn't believe in. "We're just worried," Ivy said. "You've seemed stressed, distracted." "Withdrawals will do that to a person," I said. She smiled tightly. "No, I mean, forgetting things. Repeating yourself." David added, "Jordan said you called him twice last week, asking the same question." I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. This wasn't concern. It was strategy. They were laying bricks, building a case. Ivy leaned forward. "Mom, this isn't easy for us either. We just think maybe having someone manage things could take some weight off." I reached for the drawer under the coffee table, pulled out a small cream-colored business card, slid it across the surface like a quiet threat. Marisol Diaz, attorney at law, elder advocacy and estate protection. Ivy's eyes flicked to it. Her jaw clenched before she could stop it. David stopped pacing. "No one's trying to hurt you," he said. "We just want to help." I finally looked up at them. "You want to help?" I said. "Then stop calling theft concern. Stop calling power of attorney a hug. And stop assuming the absence of yelling means the presence of weakness." The room was silent. Ivy reached for the card, but I placed my hand over it. "You think you're playing chess," I said. I leaned back in the chair, calm, measured, but I already made my move. They didn't stay long, and they didn't come back again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just opened the yellow folder and laid it flat on the coffee table. David and Ivy sat across from me, shoulders stiff, eyes darting, not at me, but at the papers. "Let's go over the timeline," I said. I pulled out the first sheet. January, $65, labeled school trip contribution. I looked at David. He blinked. "You told me Jordan's class was fundraising, but I spoke to his teacher. There was no trip, not in January, not at all." I moved to the next page. February, $92, memo line, urgent prescription. Ivy opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Same day," I continued. "There's a charge from Chateau Belle Spa for $91.50. Silence. March, gas bill, $84. Except I paid that same bill myself. I keep all my statements. Yours went to a Marriott hotel that weekend." I didn't pause for questions. I didn't wait for denials. "I could keep going," I said. "April, May, June, all with neat little excuses and matching luxuries." Ivy shifted in her seat. David stared at the grain of the table like he was trying to read something there. "I didn't come here to fight," I said. "I came to show you that I see it now. All of it. Every quiet lie. Just this once. Every polished excuse you slid across my trust like butter on toast." I reached the last page and tapped my finger on a $400 withdrawal marked Emergency Vet. "You don't own a pet." No one spoke. I closed the folder, tucked it back into the drawer. "I'm not asking you to explain. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not even asking for the money." I looked at them both. "I just wanted you to hear it out loud. Because receipts don't lie. And now, neither could they." The office smelled like lemon oil and thick paper. Marisol Diaz sat across from me, sleek navy blazer, dark curls tucked behind one ear, eyes sharp as glass. "I reviewed the draft," she said. "Clean, simple, revocable at your command." I nodded. We weren't naming Ivy, or David, or anyone with a holiday photo in my hallway. We were naming a fiduciary, a third-party professional with no skin in the family game. She slid the form across the desk. "This isn't about control," Marisol said. "It's about clarity." I took the pen. My hand didn't shake. Signed, initialed, dated. For the first time, I understood every line I was agreeing to. No sweet voices cooing, "just in case." No folded document slipped into my purse under the weight of a muffin tray. I handed it back. "I also want to revert everything to paper," I said. "No emails, no app notifications. I want the weight of real envelopes in my mailbox." Marisol smiled. "You're not the first to request that." She tapped a few keys. "Statements, banking, health records, confirmed. Paper only." She handed me a sealed envelope with a copy of the POA inside. The weight of it surprised me. Back in the car, I placed the envelope next to Robert's old sunglasses case and the peppermint tin I kept receipts in. Symbols of the old order and the new one. They thought I wouldn't fight back, that I wouldn't understand the paperwork. But I've filled out more forms in my life than they've read books, and this time the paper worked for me, not against me. I turned the key in the ignition and drove home knowing something they never saw coming, that I could play their game, and play it better. I waited until they were both seated, David on the left, arms folded, Ivy on the right, scrolling her phone like she wasn't nervous, like she wasn't cornered. I placed my phone in the center of the coffee table, pressed speaker. The line rang twice before the voice answered. "First Horizon Bank, this is Lucinda. How can I help you today?" "Hi, Lucinda," I said, my tone warm but flat. "This is Eleanor Monroe. I'd like to confirm the following on record. All previous access permissions to my accounts have been revoked, correct?" A pause, typing. "Yes, Mrs. Monroe. As of last week, your accounts are listed as single authorized only. No third-party access, no joint users, no alerts sent to outside emails or phone numbers." Ivy looked up. David sat forward slightly. "Good," I said. "And just to confirm, if anyone were to attempt to challenge that access, what happens?" "We have a fraud dispute protocol," Lucinda replied. That would open a formal internal investigation and freeze all linked activity during review. David cleared his throat. Mom, I held up one hand, didn't even look at him. And are all paper statements scheduled to be mailed directly to me? I asked. Yes, ma'am. Monthly. Confirmed. Thank you, Lucinda. I appreciate your help. My pleasure. Is there anything else you need? I glanced at Ivy, at the tight smile cracking on her lips, at David's tapping thumb. No, we're all clear now. I ended the call. Silence held in the room like smoke. They knew, and worse, for them, they had heard it from someone else. From a stranger in a blazer and headset who held more power than their crocodile tears ever would. I picked up my tea, took a slow sip. You changed the rules, I said quietly. I just read them. And for once they didn't interrupt, because there was nothing left to say, except the sound of a checkmate. He came alone this time. No text, no warning. Just a knock. Light, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be there. I opened the door, already knowing what was in his hand. A small leather pouch, black, zip top, too clean. He didn't try to come in. He held it out, fingers pinched at the edge like it might burn him. I brought the key, he said. I took it without a word. It was the last one. The one he'd never admitted to still having. I stepped aside but didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. I think we both knew the visit wasn't about reconciliation. It was about conclusion. David cleared his throat, looked past me, like he wanted to find a crack in the wall, a memory to cling to. But the house was silent. Still. Not his anymore. Not shared. Ivy's not coming, he said. I know. He nodded, eyes down. Then he left. Not a hug, not a plea. Just the sound of his shoes brushing against the welcome mat, then gone. I closed the door. Carried the pouch into the kitchen, opened the clear glass jar on the counter, dropped the key inside. It landed with a soft metallic click. I tore a small scrap of paper from my notepad, wrote in neat capital letters. Access revoked. Key returned. Dated it, folded it once, slipped it in. Then I sealed the lid. I didn't cry, didn't smile. Just placed the jar on the top shelf of the hall closet, where old things go when they're no longer needed, but never quite forgotten. He brought back the key, but not the trust. And some locks, once changed, don't get reopened. Not even for family. I spent the next 3 days putting things back in place, not just the files or the bank accounts. Me. I had the locks changed first. New keys. One copy in my purse, one in the fireproof box under the bed. Next, I reset the passwords again, this time with phrases only I would remember. Things they wouldn't guess because they never really asked. Favorite poems, childhood streets, my mother's secret recipe. I installed a small security camera by the door. Nothing flashy, just enough to keep a quiet record. Not because I expected them to come back, but because I no longer operated on assumption. I visited the post office, opened a safe deposit box, placed inside my wedding ring, my passbook, the signed power of attorney documents. No photos, no trinkets, just essentials. I cleaned out the hallway drawer, the one full of broken pens, rubber bands, and ghost receipts. Replaced it with labeled folders: legal, bank, medical, letters. I even threw out the rug Ivy gave me 2 birthdays ago, the one she said made the room feel younger. It had always curled at the corners like it never wanted to stay. Now, the floor feels steady. I reorganized the tea drawer, bought myself a new mug, ceramic, hand-painted. It says, unbothered, fitting. The final thing I did was open the windows, let the evening air drift through, carried the scent of jasmine and pavement, and a silence that belonged to no one else. I stood there for a long time, just watching the street. No knocks, no texts, no access. Not anymore. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. Not because I paid for it, but because no one else had a key. And the peace? The peace was not accidental. It was earned. It came in just after dinner. One new voicemail. The screen read, David. But only because I'd unblocked him earlier that day. Not for kindness, for closure. I let it play on speaker, hands still damp from rinsing the dishes. His voice was low, tired, not the rehearsed tone he used when charming clients or calming Ivy, just flat, frayed at the edges. "Hey, Mom, I know we've said a lot, or not said a lot. I guess I just wondered if maybe you'd talk to me. Maybe we could start over. Call me?" That was it. No apology. No mention of the money, of the documents, of the visit. Just a soft rattle of guilt and hope wrapped in silence. I dried my hands, sat at the table, pressed record on my phone. "David," I began. "Thank you for calling." My voice sounded steady, unmoving. "I hear that you want to talk, but before we do, here's what needs to happen." I outlined it clearly. Repayment plan, written, signed, no conditions. Documented therapy, because harm that deep doesn't disappear on its own. Proof of employment, not another business idea, not another startup dream. A job, real structure, real effort. "When those things are in place," I said, "you can reach out again. My number hasn't changed. I'm just choosing who gets to hear it now." A pause. And then, "Until then, I'll keep my peace." I hit stop. Didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it. Labeled it, "Reply when ready." The house was quiet again. But not empty. It was full of boundaries, of air I could finally breathe, of silence I chose, and of one small truth that mattered more than any apology. They blocked my number. But now, the line is mine.